You know, whenever I post a picture or a video of a paddlefish, there's always a handful of people in the comments that freak out. They're like, "Oh my God, I had no idea there was that type of fish at the Lake of the Ozarks." And then they're like, "I'm never swimming in that lake again."
They say it all the time.
It is April 7th today. We got on the water at 6:30 a.m. for a paddlefish, or spoonbill if you will, excursion with Jason Smith Fishing Adventures. We are a half an hour in. We've already got one fish on, and we're hoping that we all get our limits today. We brought my son, my brother, my father-in-law with us, and we're gonna reel in some big ass fish and help you learn more about paddlefish season, and all the things there are to know about this prehistoric looking monster of a fish. Let's go. All right, Jason, we're back, man. This is 3 times in 12 months, my friend.
That's good times.
I mean, you haven't kicked me out yet, so I haven't pissed you off enough.
No.
But this is your bread and butter, right? Paddlefish?
Yes, sir.
First of all, paddlefish season is what? What to what?
March 15th to April 30th.
All right, so we're here at the time of this recording. It's Monday, April 7th. We are about what? Less than an hour into our excursion, and we've already got 2 fish on.
Yep.
For anybody who doesn't know what the hell a paddlefish is, give us your scientific explanation.
Freshwater whale.
That is a bottom feeder?
No, they eat plankton. They're not really a bottom feeder. They'll swim anywhere in the water column and eat their food. They don't only eat plankton. We got some other microorganisms in the water that they'll pick up and eat. But spoonbill have what are called rakes in their gills. It's a backward facing, it looks like a rake. Whenever they flare their mouths, these rakes come out and they collect particulates and feed them into their, down their throat.
Yeah.
A lot of misconception is that they are bottom feeders, and they're not bottom feeders. They're not like catfish that pick stuff up on the bottom and eat. They are an open water feeder. They just, like a whale, open their mouths and swim and collect food as they swim.
Wild. You know, whenever I post a picture or a video of a paddlefish, there's always a handful of people in the comments that freak out. They're like, "Oh my God, I had no idea there was that type of fish at the Lake of the Ozarks." And then they're like, "I'm never swimming in that lake again."
They say it all the time, yeah.
Yeah, but they're harmless.
Yeah, they have no teeth. I mean, I don't even know how one would hurt you other than maybe running into you and bumping you. But they're more afraid of us than anything. They are the biggest fish in our water. And, I wouldn't be afraid to swim around them.
Now, the gentleman you're looking at here, you already probably know this if you watched our videos, but he is the man who's the current world record holder of paddlefish here in Missouri at the Lake of the Ozarks.
Guide to the world record holder.
Fair enough, but that to me counts as the guy who put the person on the fish.
Yes, sir.
And that was, what was the size again?
164 pounds, 13 ounces.
Damn, and that was just last year.
St. Patrick's Day last year. Right down in the area where we're fishing right now, actually.
Which right now we're roughly between about the 40 and the 50 mile marker?
Yes. Yeah.
On the lake. So we're a little bit more downstream towards Bagnell than where we fish for catfish. And so, Jason, your specialty would be what? Catfish or crappie? What would you consider it?
Paddlefish is one of my specialties for sure. I've been doing paddlefish for 20 years.
But only for 45 days.
But only for 45 days.
Right.
Other than that, I am a blue cat fisherman.
Yep.
And fish tournaments, and I guide blue cat throughout most of the year. And I'm also started dabbling in some crappie, and have really found that I'm pretty good at crappie too. So
that's pretty awesome. So the idea of catching, or the what we're doing right now is we're throwing. Actually, I'm not even going to try to explain it. But we are snagging, right?
We are snagging. We are pulling hooks through the water, hoping to run one into the side of these fish because it's the only way to catch them.
There's no bait.
No bait. We run a dipsy diver, which is we run a dipsy diver. This is my dipsy diver. This is what we're using at the end of our line to act as a crankbait to pull our hooks down in the water column.
Okay.
Then we have hooks tied above this, and as we're driving those hooks in hopes we're going to hit a fish with them and then be able to pull out a fish. What are you looking at? Eagle?
Yeah,
I
it's
can
bald
see it
eagle
up there.
up
Yeah,
there.
it's pretty cool. We got so many bald eagles on the lake anymore. It's it's one of my favorite birds. That and the American pelican. Love the American pelican.
They spend a lot of time here nowadays.
Yeah, they do. I'll bring you by Eagle's Nest. It's like 20 foot off the ground before we leave.
Okay. So this is my first time out doing paddle fishing, and like just your average fisherman's not going out and doing this, are they?
Not your most average fishermen, no. And a lot of average fishermen don't even know these things exist. But we do get people from all over the U.S. that come to do this. It's
at the Lake of the Ozarks.
Lake of the Ozarks and Truman Lake. We also got Table Rock in the south that also has these in it.
And so there's a misconception that I've heard going around that these are endangered.
They are protected, but not endangered. Definitely not, since they stock 45,000 of these every year in one of these lakes. So I would not call that endangered if we have the population, that ability.
They're breeding them.
They're breeding them, correct.
And where do they breed them at?
I believe they breed them here in Warsaw at Lost Valley Hatchery.
Okay.
And possibly Blind Pony down in Sweet Springs. But the Missouri Department of Conservation breeds these fish to put in these lakes for us.
How big do they have to be before they release them from their possession?
I believe 8 to 12 inches is about what they stock.
Okay.
Yep.
Because you said they don't spawn here in a lake like this, which is because they can't run up because it's dammed dam.
Because it's dammed, right. Yeah, I tell a lot of people to think of them like salmon. A lot of people know how salmon work. And just like salmon, these fish were a river fish. They ran upriver. And when they hit a dam, they just dump their eggs to die because they can't get to their natural spawning grounds to spawn. And in this body of water, they go up below Truman Dam and they dump their eggs. By the end of spoonbill season, you can go below Truman Dam and there's thousands and thousands of these fish up there. I call it their sanctuary, because once they get past the 65 bridge, that's all fishing sanctuary. You can't, besides rod and reel for crappie, bass, walleye, that kind of stuff, you can't fish up there for anything else. No other methods, no trout lines, no jug lines, no snagging.
What is keeper size of a paddlefish?
34 inches from the back of the eyeball to the fork of the tail.
Back of the eyeball, so the paddle does not come into play.
Does not, no. Well, and I think the reason for this is paddlefish get injured a lot in the water. They run them over with boat props and stuff, and we've caught a handful this year that have no bill. I mean, right at the face. So how do you measure that fish, right?
Yeah.
Well, the eyeball's always there, and the fork of the tail's always there.
Yeah.
They might lose the ends of their tails, they might lose their bills, but those 2 points are always there. So as long as you have those 2 points, you can measure your fish.
What is the purpose of the bill? Any idea?
So from what I've read, biologists don't even know what the purpose of the bill is. It does have sensors in it, but they can live without it. We've caught a fish this year, right at the eyeballs, chopped off flat. They're the craziest looking fish.
So it doesn't grow back.
Does not grow back.
Interesting. No. But yet it keeps growing if it doesn't get cut off, it seems like. Because it grows with the fish, I imagine.
It does, yes. Yeah, and it even grows after injury. I caught one that I'm gonna get beetled and basically mounted. That the bill comes up and then it goes down at an angle, and it was broken. It's got a big hump right there, so I'm gonna have him beetle that one for me and get that thing mounted because it's so unique.
So if you had to choose your favorite type of fishing, if somebody came to you tomorrow and said you can only do one type of fish now for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Probably blue cat.
Why is that?
Well, it's not seasonal for one. But blue cat, it's more, paddlefish are extremely fun to catch, but they're a very short-lived fight. And I'm not chasing this fish trying to get it to eat. Those fish, they're temperamental. You got to get them to eat. You got to locate them. This, I drop hooks and I drive. I catch fish. Yeah. There is some skill to it. I got to know how not to lose gear. I got to know how to get to my depths. But the skill behind catfishing is way greater than the skill of trolling for paddlefish. Mm-hmm. Anybody can be good at all of them, enough time. I've looked at this graph, trolling for paddlefish for hardcore for 5-6 years, trolling. These are all paddlefish right here. Hold on 1 second.
Okay.
Hey, Eric, bring up that third rod that's at 120. Bring that thing up to 60.
All right, so you just radioed back. Why?
Because I have some marking some fish I believe are paddlefish up in the upper water column, and since most of my gear's running real close to the bottom, I was only running one rod in the 35-foot range, and these fish are in between 20 and 30. So I'm bringing a rod up to get some hooks in that range, in the hopes that maybe the fish are hanging out up high in the water column today, and we'll hit more fish with higher, bringing that gear up into that water column.
So we got how many poles in the water?
4 rods.
4 rods in the water, and you're running all different depths.
All different depths, yep.
So what is the gear that we're using to be able to control all of that?
So I am using Penn reels. I use a mix of Penn Squall and Penn Fathom. Penn Squall being the cheaper of the 2 reels. They're a good reel, but I find with as many fish as we catch and as fast as I like to drive, I'm breaking spool pins, the pins that hold the spools in place. So I've upgraded to the Fathoms, which have double the size of a spool pin, in hopes that I quit breaking spool shafts. I think we broke 10 this year.
Oh, really? What is it right above the reel that looks like it's like a little counter or something? So
we use reels with line counters. The line counter is so I can control my depth. My particular divers, the way I run my divers, from 20 to 35 feet run 2 to 1. 2 foot of line out to 1 foot of depth. Anything shallower than 20 feet, it's more like a 1.5 to 1. And anything deeper than 35 feet, it's almost 3 to 1. Once I get to about 45 or 50 foot, I can no longer get a small diver down. I have to upgrade the size of my diver. A lot of people that fish think if you put out 500 foot of line, that diver is going to dive deeper, and at a certain point you got so much drag out there that your diver will no longer dive. So we use a diver that's got an upgraded size and a heavier weight on it to get us down when we really need to get down there. But basically, unless it's deeper than 55 feet, I really don't run those deeper divers. They're really hard on rods and reels. So,
is there a certain depth that paddlefish tend to hang out in?
Not specifically. I'm going to tell you that the last couple days, these fish have been right down on the bottom. So the bottom 10 foot of the water columns where we're catching all our fish the last 2 to 3 days. 4 days ago, all my fish were coming in the top 20 foot of the water column. Or top 25 foot. I couldn't catch anything down low. Everything was up high. What changes that? I'm going to guess the cold front coming through stuck them all back to the bottom.
And then it warms up and they come back up?
But it's not necessary that I've chased paddlefish with the live scope in as shallow as 3 foot of water.
Really?
I'm chasing them down in 3 foot of water. I've seen them in 50 foot of water in the top of the water column and in 50 foot of water glued to the bottom. So they really don't have a specific spot they need to be in the water column. I don't know what draws them in the different areas of the water column. Traditionally, pulling lead, everybody assumed these fish were on the bottom. So you pulled all day long and they're glued to the bottom, so that's why you caught them. Well, I can tell you once I started pulling divers of some kind, I had days where the first year I started pulling divers, there's everybody around me is pulling lead because we weren't even using dipsies at the time. We were using homemade things. Everybody's pulling lead around us. Nobody's caught any fish. We ain't caught no fish pulling divers because I'm pulling right off the bottom. And I'm using this little 6-inch, 5-inch craft thing with little fish going across screen. And about every 100 yards, 5 foot under the boat's this huge blob of a fish going by. Just clicked in my head, well, let me get one of these rods and just barely put it under the water and see what happens. We go about 50 yards and we got a fish on it.
Really?
I'm like, no way. So I do it again and we caught another fish. So after that, I'm running 2 rods. I'm talking top 10 foot of the water column and I'm in 60 foot of water. And we're catching fish on both rods. Well, by noon, I got 6 fish tied on the boat and there ain't nobody else with fish on the boat.
Wow.
It's because them fish weren't on the bottom that day. They were in the 10 top 20 foot of the water column.
And this is how long ago?
That was probably, okay, let me think, 15 years ago? No, probably not that long ago. Let me recalculate. With this wife, oh yeah, it's probably been 12 years, 13 years ago that happened.
Really? And that was kind of the turning point.
That was kind of the turning point of me thinking a little differently about how I paddle fished. Okay, so then you go fast forward a couple years, and started getting into the mindset of where I might want to do a little guiding for retirement, and one thing happened another. Now I'm planning on guiding, and I'm starting to use better electronics, and I finally get line counters and do all that, get away from these homemade divers, and I'm driving my boat all the time looking at top of the line graphs. Now I know where these fish are hanging out.
Yeah.
So I'm just targeting them water columns, knowing that, hey, if they're not on the bottom, get off the bottom, you know? I mean, that's the mindset that we used to have pulling lead, is everything's on the bottom. They're bottom feeders. That's totally not true with these fish. Another example, I'm setting up for a trip. We got all our rods out back, and before I like to drive the boat, I want that top hook down in the water. So I'm 7 foot in the water right underneath the back of my boat, and I've drifted up by shore. I'm in 8 foot of water. Got a boat full of 6 girls and me and Eric. Put it in gear, and I'm turning my boat to start trolling out to the deeper. And as soon as I start turning, I'm like, we're snagged. I throw it, and I get out, and I go back to the rod, and it's a fish. And we hit an 85-pounder, 20 foot from shore in 7.5 foot of water.
Wow.
Okay. And I mean, my hooks were 5 foot under my boat, and that fish swam under my boat and got in my hooks. Wow. So it just kind of shows how the fish don't play by the rules, and they swim everywhere. I mean, where you swimming at the beach, they're probably swimming right next to you. They don't care.
Somebody hears that, they're never swimming.
Never swimming in this lake again. That's okay. That's just more beach space for us.
All right, show me what we got going on here with the whole rod and reel setup.
All right, real quick rundown of what we're using. We're using a Surge Elite rod. These are made by Tombstone Tackle out of Columbia, Missouri. I pair it with a Penn Fathom 2. I'm using a 20 size with a line counter. These are a Chinese knockoff Dipsy diver, but basically a 107 millimeter Dipsy diver. Mine has a no trip clip, so you cannot trip it. This thing's built in. 10-aught treble hooks.
You got 2 per, right?
I use 2 per. I also double my line. You notice my line's got 4 strands down here.
Yeah.
Helps me to keep these from getting ripped off from the fish when they're flailing their tail. Other than that, we use 80-pound braid. I use Suffix 832 is the braid I use. It's got the smallest diameter. And I'll tell you, it catches world records, so we're not too worried about it breaking. Other than that, that's the setup we use for catching paddlefish.
And now you will, when you take customers out, you will clean them, give them their meat that they caught and all the whole bit, right?
Exactly. Yep. We clean all the fish and send them home with some fish.
All right. Well, let's do it.
Awesome. So I've already cut these fish off the fillet at this point, and I'm going to show you how we clean the red meat off our filleted fish. So I'm going to cut my fillet off the skin. I got the inner part of the fish right here that has this fat line down it. I take this fat off. Any of this fat on top, I shave that stuff off. I flip it over. You got the red meat side. There's a vein down the middle. I put a slice in the vein about 1/4 of an inch down. I turn my knife, and as I'm going towards the edge, I get thinner as I come out. If you do it just right, all that red meat will come off and you won't have any red left on your fillet. Same thing on the other side. I start there, I get thinner, and I work my way down and shave all that red meat off. You don't want to leave any of this milky red stuff on your fish, like right here. That stuff is nasty, it will make you gag. So when my piece is clean, it is perfectly clean. There's no fat, no red meat. Same thing with the other side. No fat, no red meat.
What's the best way to prepare these?
Pieces like this on the grill, smoker, you can cut it and fry it. If you get a thicker piece like this, but that's about the thickest you would ever want to smoke. But here's how we fry our spoonie, is in chunks like this, about 1 inch by 1 inch cubes. And that's how we fry our spoonbill around here. So those would be fryer pieces.
Jason, another successful fishing trip. If somebody wants to book paddlefish, obviously we already discussed. I mean, by the time this video comes out, the season's gonna be about over, but let's just say somebody wants to book next year. How do they go about doing so?
First of all, I start booking October 15th. My contact info is mofishingguide.com is my website. Smith's Fishing Adventures on Facebook, or you can just give me a call at 573-268-4082.
And that is March 15th through April 30th, but it's not just paddlefish. You also do
Blue cat.
You also do blue cat.
Crappie, a little summer walleye.
Okay.
But my main fish through the year is blue cat and crappie.
And so they can book, anybody could book pretty much, I think you take 1 month off a year, is that right?
I will pretty much book trips 360 days a year. So as long as it's not on Christmas or Thanksgiving, I'm pretty much booking trips and going fishing, whether I'm booking trips or not. So.
Awesome, man. Well, we appreciate you, and I think we need to get out here for a crappie trip next.
Awesome. I look forward to it.
See you, brother.